And I'm leveling up. We got video and everything.
Thanks.
Woof.
How about that?
Cool. Recorded, and here we go. Oh, I gotta mute this one.
And we don't look at the camera.
You can if you want. I do every once in a while. But yeah, it's whatever. Hey, I'm Mark Andriani.
And I'm Benji Horning.
And this is
The
Echo Collective. Well, Benji, you're here, and you're becoming a friend of the Echo Collective. You were the first time I've ever had a guest on more than once.
Wow.
And I knew that that was going to happen before we recorded the first one.
What an honor.
So you've become a friend of the Echo Collective, and I think that maybe the audience should get to know you a little bit better. And I know this about you. I know that you were in a band.
Was in a band.
In a previous life, and that band had some decent success, and then you had a pretty radical shift away from that life. Yeah. So just let the people know. Let the people know what they want to know.
Well, you can't find it online, so yeah, if someone's trying to blackmail me, know that it will not, you won't be able to have any luck there. But anyways, pre like, iTunes, Spotify world. In high school, I was in a screamo band called Ember Sky, and we played all around San Diego and was doing that thing. It was like a whole moment, right, in our
Ember
culture.
Sky,
Ember
not
Sky,
online.
Not online.
So
Yeah.
if I find it right now,
You won't.
okay.
Okay. There's somewhere stashed in my, parents' garage some CDs.
Oh.
Somewhere, but
Bring them out.
But there was but anyways, we play shows almost every weekend. That started kind of growing just organically and naturally. So by the time I graduated high school, San Diego hosted like a kind of a citywide battle of the bands. We ended up becoming the final four after this like kind of knockout round style thing at these different venues.
This is different high schools all over San Diego.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was not just high school bands. We were one of the younger ones, but we like Volcom Clothing was just kind of on the scene. They hosted the whole thing.
Yes.
Played Soma main stage. And got like second in this competition, and that essentially kind of tipped us as a band to like the Volcom, the brand, like loved us, so they actually sponsored our first tour. And
So Volcom, the company, the skate company,
Yeah.
said, "Here's a bunch of clothes and here's some money to go and promote yourselves and our brand."
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sick.
So it was right around the time like Vans Warped Tour was kind of popping off, and the first place winner like got to be on Vans Warped Tour, and so we were pretty close to doing that, but ended up doing our own tour. And it was right around that time, started talking to some record labels. It was just significant enough that it was directing where I thought my life was going. Nowhere did I ever think we were gonna like blow up or be this huge band. But I was like, I could maybe try this for a few years.
Sure.
And, eat, chicken soup every night and Pop-Tarts and make it. But it was right around that time as we were touring for the first time, playing bigger shows, starting to see some growth, that we got off tour. And I ended up being invited to go to Ukraine to work with kids who were just coming off the street, being part of this orphanage. And I had this life-altering moment where I realized that being with these kids and working with them, living with them for a few weeks was way more life-giving than I ever felt on stage. And that kind of put me into this internal crisis of like, do I really want to do this band thing? It's going to be a grind. Yeah. As now I know more than ever, like being a touring musician is not easy. And I just really, I didn't have a language for it at the time, but I was like, I think I want to do something with my life that feels missional for the sake of others. So ended up, long story short, quitting my band, going to a Bible college in LA where I met my wife, and we started working at a church in the inner city of East LA, like a predominantly Latino church. And I had that same feeling I had in Ukraine of just like, I'm like doing something, helping people. My wife was in a jazz band at the time. She's a phenomenal singer and still makes music to this day. And so that kind of, my music journey morphed from like punk and screamo music into trying to learn jazz chords.
Yes.
Which is a completely different echelon of music.
Yep. It's like speaking a different language.
Yeah.
Even though you have the same rudimentary parts, it's like speaking a different language. Dude, I totally get it.
So that's how I kind of like, I never grew up thinking I'd be a pastor or anything like that.
Right.
Thought I'd probably do something creative or with music, and still get to do a lot of that. But
Yeah. And you married somebody who's crazy talented and
so talented and so creative. And so the fact that like God brought two artists together is kind of funny that I'm the more organized of the two of us, which is kind of a joke ongoing in our family.
That's really funny.
Yeah, but she's still releasing records under Jennifer Horning and like sang on John Foreman's last album, like all the background vocals.
So
and she's
everybody
still
go
singing.
listen to that.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that your wife was a singer.
Yeah, she's very, very good.
Until I saw one of your posts on the gram, and I was like, oh, she's like not even like just, oh, she sings. It's like, oh, she's a singer.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
And we could probably do a whole nother post or episode on that, because there's so much in the music side of church life that is a part of our shared experience. And oh my gosh, okay, I'm getting excited and off topic. Okay, so I want to start this conversation. Thank you for sharing about yourself to the community. Here's the question to start this one off. If the Desert Fathers could spend one weekend, 2 days, observing modern American Christianity, what would concern them most? And just for those who are listening, Desert Fathers are like, this goes back to 2nd and 3rd century, these guys who are basically like, we're going to go out into the desert and literally practice monastic life. This is like the beginnings of monasteries and like being secluded and away from urban centers, right? And is this how you understand it too?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got these guys who devoted their entire lives to these spiritually forming practices. And this is where this is kind of the beginnings of like a lot of the stuff that we talked about last time. Yep. So if these guys came and showed up and observed modern American life, I guess modern American Christianity for 2 days, what would they be most concerned with?
That's a really intriguing question. If we're just focusing on the spiritual life, because obviously there'd be just so much about society in general that would shock them.
Yes, for sure.
But the Desert Fathers, who started these kind of monastic movement away from these cities, was largely in tandem with Christianity, which was growing in this surprisingly quick and subversive way, grew to a point that it began to be adopted and eventually institutionalized within the Roman Empire. And so their retreat was not necessarily a result of persecution. We actually have records that the early church would move towards areas of persecution, of famine, of disease. They weren't afraid of that. What they fled was largely the institutionalization of Christianity that brought comfort and a combination of state and church power together.
Yes.
That they felt was a threat to the spiritual life.
Yeah.
And so they would retreat to these places to really not be distracted. And so I actually wonder if they would find quite a bit of parallels of Constantine's Christianity moment and ours in terms of how much of modern, let's even say kind of like American evangelicalism, could actually find some similarities to what was happening to Christianity around that time, and this need to draw away from that. But here's, I think, what a lot of people are misunderstanding about the monastic movements is it was not this movement away from people, but it was a way to move towards God for the sake of people. So a lot of times there would be this overlap of going back and integrating with people and society. And so there's a lot of talk right now about kind of this neo-monastic movement of what does it look like for Christians in the West, even in the past year or two, where you have started to see a rise of almost kind of this like pop Christianity, celebrities, podcasters, and a lot of people are celebrating that, which I think there's a lot to celebrate. Bible sales are up, all of these different things.
Sure.
But what I find really intriguing is along with that comes a lot of language that sounds triumphant and feels very powerful, like we're somehow winning something. And I think that does something for followers of Jesus, who Christianity has always grown best in contested spaces. So I wonder if one of their concerns would be, as church has continued to value things like comfort, accessibility, celebrity, platform, prominence. I think people who are genuinely following Jesus find themselves a bit conflicted. Because again, and there's this tension point of reaching people is a good kingdom thing. And largely some of these movements have happened to try and find that, how do we reach more people? How do we draw more people in? I think those things feel very gospel to me. But I think there can also be this point where we associate Christian faith as somehow life becoming more comfortable, easy, blessed. That runs a little bit counterintuitive to the cruciform life. And so I wonder if they would look at ours and be like, yeah, this might be a time, whether that's in a very like structured type of way, like a monastic society, but probably more in a organic, interpersonal way. How do you draw away from just the inertia of culture and the loudness of voices, so that you can actually hear God? And I think that would be their concern. Is how can the soul sustain the pace in which culture demands in order to succeed and to thrive, which, whether we realize it or not, Christianity can impact culture, but the broader culture can also impact Christianity, and sometimes they start to look like each other.
Yes.
The Christianity has taken a lot from the playbook of corporate America, how to do better systems,
right,
how to do things like that. And again, the good side of that is you want healthy organizations, you want checks and balances. The problem with that is if the church is trying to become fascinated with best practices within corporate America, the church will start to look like a corporation, not a family. So I think they would be concerned about how far some things have gone. I think they would be concerned just in general, like, how do you do this? How do you follow Jesus in our day and age with all the demands that are placed upon an individual and a human being? And then probably the last thing is, one of the things about monastic communities, yes, there's lots of people move into solitude, but normally those are done in groups. You would do those together. What does it mean to have covenant Christian community? Again, going back to largely just the pace of life. Like, how do you know one another, walk in such a way that Jesus would have walked with his disciples, with other people? I bet their heads would be spinning. And to be honest, I think sometimes our heads are spinning. We're just trying to figure it out.
For sure. Yeah, I think the way that you kind of presented that was like with so much tact and so much grace. So thank you, because I think I would have answered the question with the same starting point, thinking about church and state and that marrying in some ways. And I probably would have given a little bit more of just out of curiosity, what's your Enneagram number? I know I would never type anybody. What's your Enneagram number?
I'm a 9.
Okay, you're a 9. I'm an 8.
Yeah.
And so my response to that's another episode for another time, but my response to that is like, well, let me just tell you what they would be thinking, and then I would get really, really feisty about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering that, but I fully agree with that. So the pace, all of it, you're talking about the constant, I was even thinking about it as you were talking. I was like, okay, so there's this gravity of culture that's constantly pulling us towards its center. I even was watching a science show, Mark Rober or whatever, with my daughter, and we only see one side of the moon because the gravity of the Earth is constantly pulling the moon towards it. So we only ever see one side of the moon.
Wow.
Humanity has only ever seen one side of the moon because gravity of Earth, the center of the Earth, is constantly holding the moon, pulling it in, so we can only see one side. It never rotates for us. Fascinating. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, so you're talking about culture, and you're saying, how do we survive if culture is constantly pulling us in? What are the things that we have to do as human beings, image bearers, to survive and to live well in the world that we live in? And I'm considering this a part 2 to our previous conversation. So I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say the word Shabbat as a practice.
Shalom.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, which I had never heard as a phrase until I spent time in Israel. I know you have too. And my goodness, those were life-changing trips for me. But Shabbat as a Hebrew word meaning to cease or stop. We usually say it's rest.
Yeah.
But it means stop. And we talked about it momentarily in our last conversation about how Israel has just come out of slavery after 400 years of being oppressed. And God says, you have been working straight for 400 years. It's time to slow down, take a break. 1 day a week. Follow the model from Genesis 1. For 6 days I worked and labored, and then I just stopped and I enjoyed and delighted in the thing that has been made. So Sabbath is one of those practices that for you, you said you were talking about Mulholland last time, upstream and downstream formation practices. And we need both, because some's easy and some's hard. And one of the things that you said was downstream for you is Sabbath. You said silence and solitude first, but you snuck in Sabbath as like this beautiful thing that you love. For me, Sabbath feels really hard. Talk to us about Sabbath. Talk to me about your practices and like how should I understand this as I'm living in a cultural moment that is like so profoundly overwhelmed with Christian content and Christian ideas, and even like Christianity being like celebrated in celebrity culture. But like for people who are actually trying to follow Jesus, I'm not saying that they're not, but people who are like trying to follow Jesus, how should Sabbath play a part in that? Because the Sabbath is so much bigger than just like, oh, you go to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
I set you up with a lot.
No, it's...
I'm basically saying, let Benji cook. Like,
I am curious. There's been kind of a re-enchantment with the idea of Sabbath with evangelicalism in the past 10 years or so, and I don't think that's by accident. I think that people are actually drawn to this because it was essentially other than within certain kind of more like Eastern Orthodox within Christianity, it really wasn't talked about a whole lot. If anything, it's kind of talked down upon. It's like this is part of the old Mosaic law.
yeah.
So I think the best place to start with Sabbath, even before we get to how it was prescribed to Israel, which is a really important part, is in the creation narrative. That God gets finished with all this beautiful creative act, and then he rests. Which I find really fascinating, that God doesn't grow tired. So this is not a reaction to exhaustion. This is for what we know, this is an act of delight. And what I find most fascinating is the first day humanity existed was on the Sabbath. So before work was prescribed, it was a day of rest. And so I think one of the things I think is so critical to the Sabbath is it helps us regain and access that Eden-like humanity that marked the very opening breaths of our existence, was to join God in the delight of all that he has created. There is work to do. And I think a lot of people who talk about Sabbath, like, yeah, but what about work? You have to work 6 days a week. I'm like, absolutely. Sure. I would just say if I look at our culture, work is not only something we do well, it's something we idolize, which is why I think Sabbath is a little bit, is significantly more countercultural. Whether you're an 8 or a 9, it's downstream, upstream. It's never easy.
Sure.
Because I think we live post-Eden.
Yep.
Where work and toil are very much a part. Actually, that work is now combined with toil, which means that work is either something you want to avoid and you lean into laziness and sloth, or work is something that you actually start to treat as a god and you use it to help identify yourself and to secure yourself and to protect yourself. And so I think Sabbath actually is one of the ways you have a healthy relationship with work. It helps you realize the things that come up in you when you stop. The areas where you get nervous of like, well, what if people can't access me? What if, what happens if I stop? What happens if I turn the engine off? Will something in me break? And it is wild what comes up in you in a Sabbath. So if I can get just practical in my life, Rick Warren in his book just talks about how if you work with your hands, you just Sabbath with your mind, and if you work with your mind, you Sabbath with your hands. And I kind of like that framework of Sabbath. There's a lot of freedom within Sabbath. Jesus corrects a very hard, rigid interpretation of Sabbath with the Pharisees by saying, no, the Sabbath was made for man.
Yes.
Like, this is a gift. And so for me, a lot of my job is being relationally accessible and intellectually kind of turned on so that I can work, write, study, things like that. So my Sabbath leaves those two things get turned off. So my phone is off, which I think it may be the most common thing we all share. And so for me, my Sabbath, I can't do it on Sundays, even Saturdays, but Fridays for me is my day off. So I have my phone off. And the amount of times I feel like phantom vibrations in my pocket of
it's unbelievable.
Of like, I'm supposed to be getting a text message. I'm like, I don't have my phone today.
Yeah.
The amount of times I go and reach for the phone that's not there, and I want to check. The amount of times I'm standing in a line waiting for food and I feel bored and I immediately do that lets me know that I have become accustomed to always being available, which is omnipresence is uniquely God's.
Yep.
And
totally.
When your phone's off, you actually reminding yourself you are not God. And so when I turn on my phone, normally it's like in the evening of Friday. So I turn off Thursday night, turn it back on Friday night. And there's 100 text messages or something. Some of it's just, family group chats or things like that. But there's normally a handful of text messages that were a bit urgent. And it's actually in those moments where I've had to trust God to be God. And I had a friend one time tell me that your level of rest is oftentimes an indicator of your level of faith. Because when you are not able to rest, oftentimes it means that you struggle, that God is able to be God in those scenarios, with those people, in those situations, whether that's with a corporation or whether that's, even with family or things like that. It's you are reminding yourself that first and foremost, you are human, you are limited. And when you don't ever access that, there is a subtle narrative we adopt that our intrinsic worth and dignity is attached to our usefulness and our productivity. And so when we don't feel useful, when we don't feel productive, when we don't feel like we were contributing something, weird things happen to us. Like our ego starts to come up, our insecurities, our anxieties.
Yep.
So I've learned to enjoy Sabbath. When I first started practicing it, it was strange and hard and uncomfortable. And now I've learned to kind of enjoy the delight side of it. But a lot of times it's maybe like a good workout or going for a long run where you're just like, this actually kind of hurts and I'm enjoying it at the same time.
Yep.
So,
yeah. That's so good. As you're talking about, say that quote again from your friend. Your faith is, the level of your faith is connected to.
Yeah, your level of rest really helps show your level of faith.
Yes.
And
it's so good. Because that draws me back to, because like I said before, like Sabbath is like this significantly bigger than just Sunday mornings I go to church with my family and then we aren't supposed to do anything. Like I get asked the question so much by students, like, I don't want a Sabbath because it seems so boring.
Right.
Like there's just an assumption that if you don't work, then on Sabbath, it's like you just sit there. Like, am I allowed to listen to music? Am I allowed to read books? Like for like younger listeners, like I'm thinking college age students who are listening to this, or even people who are just Americans who have never practiced Sabbath. Like what's the framework for how we should understand Sabbath as modern people? Because it's not just sit around and do nothing and twiddle my thumbs and be bored. Obviously, boredom is good. And actually, the thing that you were talking about, those phantom vibrations, I was going to ask you, have you ever heard of this guy, Dr. Archibald Hart?
Yes.
You have?
I have. I haven't read this book, though.
This is the guy who was the first, like, neuro-brain guy who was, like, this digital invasion, which is the book is called. The book is called The Digital Invasion. Highly recommend. He's talking about, like, the dopamine transmitters, all the neuro stuff. He was the guy who was like, this is what's happening in our brains, creating these different levels of threshold for what we need in order to feel something. And our addiction to our technology and our phones specifically is creating it's like homeostasis. That level has risen for all people. And so in order to get to the next level, we have to get more extreme in the things that we seek after. And I was like, holy smoke. So turning off the phone is like this, wait, what's happening? Like, it's such a wild thing, because he said the text messages, the same transmitters are hitting like Christmas morning all the time. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. So crazy.
Yeah, and there's now so much research about that. So I think if you're listening to this and you're just like, I would literally challenge you, just try it.
Yes.
Tell your friends or your, if you're married, your spouse, just plan for it. Have your phone off for 24 hours and see what happens in you. It's fascinating. Take note of it. But also experience the freedom of what that looks like. And to your question, which is a really good one, is like, I have a hard time with Sabbath, I'm going to feel bored, things like that. So interestingly enough, it's actually supposed to be the opposite. It's supposed to be arguably the most enjoyable day of your week. And so the Jewish tradition is Jewish fathers would go and put a spoonful of honey on their children's tongues each morning, and they would recite, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." And so the Sabbath begins, Sabbath begins at night with a meal, a feast. So if you look at how the people of God have always treated the Sabbath, it's actually a time not to be bored or to restrain. It's actually a time to indulge and to delight. And so one of my favorite things that happens to me on Sabbath is so normally I try to eat pretty healthy during the week, except on Fridays. Like, I love donuts. I'll go to VG's and go to Bump. And I'll eat like apple fritter, and I'm just like, and I literally taste and I say, I taste and see the Lord is good.
In this apple fritter.
I'm just like, I'm looking at the ocean.
That's so good.
But I had a mentor of mine told me, he's like, Sabbath is the day that you taste your food. Everything is slower. Like, you notice the color of the plants. You linger in your conversations. You listen to really good music.
Yes.
And you turn it up loud. There is something of the good gifts God has given you that you have been bypassing all week long. You finally get to enjoy. And when you can frame Sabbath like that, all of a sudden, because I think sometimes Sabbath is like, I'm just so exhausted, I need a break. And sometimes those days are awful. You just want to lay around and like watch Netflix and like not go to bed. But and this is why traditionally before Sabbath you have what's called the day of preparation. So you do your chores, you do extra shopping, you get everything ready. Think about this, it's like a mini vacation every week, where you stop from work and you delight in the good gifts that God has given you. Now, Eugene Peterson would say the Sabbath is to pray and play. And I like his framework for that. Yeah. Because on one end, the pray part is all of those things, the apple fritter, the sunset, the walk with your family, the laughter, it's all supposed to be pointing you to the bread of life, the light of the world, the one who's called you friend, not servant. Like, all of those are just shadows trying to point you to the substance of God. Yeah. So you don't want to miss it. It's not just like, I'm going to go numb out and just like binge like a series of whatever. And again, not that a movie or something like that couldn't be a part of it, but I think enjoying the art, the relationships is really, I think, one of the benefits. And the other one is to play. And I think I may have mentioned this last podcast, but one thing I go back to, the older I get, I think Sabbath comes most easily to children. Where they know how to have a good time. Yeah. And so a lot of times my Sabbath, I'll literally think back to like my 12-year-old self. I'm like, what would I have loved? Like, what did I do when I like got my driver's license? Well, I threw my skateboard deck in the back of my like old Ford Ranger, and I drove and I skated like a 4-stair, and then I went and got a burrito and like sat in La Jolla and like surfed, and oftentimes it's those moments that I'm like, oh, that helps trigger something. Like, I can get so wound up in just how much there is to do. Yeah. That is good and godly. Remember, we were made to work 6 days a week, and yet God's just like, don't miss the good gifts that I've given to you. And so when I treat Sabbath like that, it has, I would say, moved from an upstream discipline now to it's like a downstream where I'm just like, I'm so ready to meet with Jesus in these very earthy ways, ordinary ways. And it sounds weird. Like I look at the faces of my kids longer. I'm like, so yeah, I really enjoy it. There's A.J. Swoboda, who probably wrote my favorite book on the subject. It's called Subversive Sabbath. He says that the problem with the Sabbath is that there are huge rewards and incentives for not actually doing it. The modern industrial complex generally rewards Sabbath breaking as a rule. And I think that's like such a good point to be like, man, we are rewarded in our culture to not Sabbath.
Yeah, just grind 7 days a week.
Yeah.
1,000%. It's so funny because, like, why is it, and I don't know if you're going to speak to the psychology of this, but I think it points to what you just quoted. Like, I don't long for Chick-fil-A. It's never like, I gotta have it. It's just not and I know some people do, but it seems like the only time I ever have like an inkling like, I should have Chick-fil-A is on the day that I can't have it. It's a fascinating thing. And what's so interesting is like I know Chick-fil-A has, their Christian heritage and et cetera, and their political stuff, whatever. That's not even the point of this, is to say like, when you talk about economics and Sabbath playing into the economic stuff, like I said, Sabbath is bigger than this one day. Like, you go back into Leviticus and you have God telling the Israelites like, hey, every 7th year, don't do any planting.
Yeah. And
that gets back like as an agrarian society, it's like, wait, I'm not supposed to do anything. I'm not supposed to control. I'm not supposed to manage. I'm not supposed to plant. I'm not supposed to reap, harvest, sow, whatever. I'm just supposed to just let that be. And then whatever it grows, I can have, which is so great. And God has even said in Leviticus, like, I'll give you more than enough.
Yeah.
But don't do anything.
Yeah, and it's why it goes back to that trust thing. Like,
yes.
Rest reveals the lack of or the abundance of your trust in God to meet those things. It's funny, there is research done around the Seventh-day Adventists who are Christians, and yet they hold some really strict views on some of those more Jewish traditions that they believe are still supposed to be practiced. So one of them, as their name intends, is the Sabbath.
Right.
But there's two things that researchers have found. One is they are consistently ranked one of the happiest subgroups in the world. That they're just happier people.
Seventh-day
Adventists.
No kidding.
And secondly, on average, they live 10 years longer than other people. Which, if you do the math, let's say we live 70 years, they've Sabbath those years. They just have more time. This is like scientifically proven stuff.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's almost like God knew what he was doing, And I know we talked about this last podcast, but I think for me, one of the biggest paradigm shifts for me was realizing the Exodus was about getting Israel out of Egypt, but the Sabbath was about getting Egypt out of Israel. And for 400 years...
Hold on. Say that again, because that was so like quotable and Instagram worthy. I'm not going to use it for that, but like I just heard it and I was like, wait. That's the kind of quote you have to read twice in a book to make sure you understand it, because it's so good.
So the Exodus was about getting Israel out of Egypt. But the reason why the Sabbath is right there along with do not murder, do not commit adultery, is because God is just as serious about getting Egypt out of Israel. And we all have different proverbial pharaohs in our life, and it's not going to be hard for us to figure them out in a highly secular, capitalistic world that we live in.
Sure.
That we all have pharaohs, and so.
And a couple examples might be money, might be success, might be ego, could be a million different things. But yeah, that's good, so good.
And I think that God is still, like through the cross and salvation, he has made a way for us to get out of Egypt and into the promised land of his presence for all of eternity. And simultaneously, he is inviting us to, in Paul's words, don't be yoked again under this yoke of slavery. It is for freedom's sake that Christ set us free. As Christians, there should be something about us that we're marked with the type of freedom that even though we exist in this world, we're not of it. Like there's something about how we exist in the world that, is this non-anxious presence. Not that we don't have worries, not that we wouldn't love to have more control over our life, but I heard one research that said we only have control over about 18% of our life. And
18?
Yeah.
No, that can't be right because I have way more control than that. I'm just kidding.
But we think we have so much more. But even like we're in this room right now, there are factors going on in this room we have no control over. The weather, the wind, the people, the person driving that machinery over there. Like we actually have a very small amount of our life that we get to control. And the Sabbath actually flips that as a source of anxiety to a source of to a gift. Or thank you, you are still in control. And so it's honestly one of the, especially when I talk with pastors, entrepreneurs, CEOs, startup people who are highly driven by their mission, their purpose, 3s on the Enneagrams. Oftentimes, Sabbath is really tough. And it is for me. Like I love creating. I love building. There's so much to do. Like I have 6 kids and a church that's complex and needs a lot of things. And to sit back and to remind myself, first and foremost, I'm a kid. I am to be seen as a son long before I'm a servant. And I am to delight in my Father and the good gifts He's given me. And just that sense of contentment, that's probably the other, that's like the cousin of Sabbath, is like contentment. Of like Psalm 23, Lord, you are my shepherd. I don't lack anything. I have all that I need. And Sabbath reminds me of that reality that, to be honest, I don't naturally lean towards most of the week.
That's so good. There's an episode that's going to air tomorrow, and this one will come out Friday, but it's a metaphor from Narnia, Silver Chair. But I harp on Philippians 4 in this mini episode, this little bonus thing. And there's a word in that Philippians 4, like, I have learned the secret of contentment.
Wow.
And that learned is the thing that I was like, oh my gosh. Paul didn't just like Band-Aid contentment with Jesus. He was like, I have learned this. It's like he had to go through it and practice these things to get to the place where like the circumstances around me, the things I can't control, that 82% that I can't control, that's the thing that I've learned to not let my lack of control, my lack of ability to control my circumstances, I can still be content regardless of what's going on. And that's the thing that I'm like, I think what you're saying is like practicing Sabbath, practicing these other disciplines can be the thing that gets me to the place where I can say, yes, I have learned the secret of contentment. Yeah.
Like and I find a lot of comfort in that too, that this is not something for most that comes naturally. I'm blanking on the guy who said it, but one of my favorite quotes about contentment is, you are not content because you are wealthy. You are wealthy because you are content. And I think that sometimes like, well, I'll be content when I hit this sales goal, I finish these finals, I finish building this project, then I'll be content. I get this girlfriend, I marry this person, like, yes, then I'll be content. And I think the reality is if you cannot be content right now, you won't be. Somewhere else, something else. And that it feels far-fetched, and that's why Paul says, I had to learn this. And it's funny, attached to that in Romans 7, when he's talking about the things I want to do, I don't do, the things I don't, the context of that is him talking about the 10th commandment, that he failed to actually open eyes to the gospel. Because as a Pharisee, he's like, I'm doing all these things. But then he realized the 10th commandment is do not covet. Like I actually could not stop wanting what was not mine. And that opened my eyes to my own wretchedness and sin. And he said, and I still the things I want to do, I don't do. There's still that thing in me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he writes in Philippians, like, I'm learning like the secret of being content. And I think that is just one of the most beautiful marks of spiritual maturity. And is to say, Lord, I am satisfied in you in the season where I am. And in no way is that against holy ambition and drive and the kingdom expanding. I would just say, actually, if we're trying to grow the kingdom, live missionally, do something good in the world, and we cannot access on a regular basis the peace and contentment Christ has for us right now, then we will end up being a detriment to that kingdom cause. And so it's, I've now been Sabbathing probably like 6 or 7 years into, that, the kids out there.
Thank you. You got some kids.
Into that practice. And now I'm like, I feel it. And it doesn't mean there aren't weeks that like, Jesus says, like, if your sheep's fallen into a hole, you got to go pick that up. There's
1,000%.
Sabbaths for sure that
Yes.
I'm not rigid on. Like, I'm like, I need to go take care of this thing. But I feel it. By the next week or like the third week, John Mark Comer, who has a really amazing book on this topic that probably most people have heard on here, called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, I had a conversation with one time that he said, the enemy wants to turn us into like a parody of ourselves. And he gave me an example. He's like, when I was releasing this book, he's like, I had this desire and this dream that this book would do well and maybe hit like bestseller list, which ended up doing. He's like, and I realized that I had missed a Sabbath 7 weeks in a row promoting this book. And that in an attempt to tell people about the good news of God's rest, the enemy was trying to use that to actually rob me of that very thing. And so I wonder what, in the name of good and sometimes even godly things, we miss out on that. And I think one of the most beautiful examples of that is just Mary of Bethany in scriptures. Martha was not doing anything wrong, something actually very biblical and praiseworthy, to serve Jesus and to be hospitable. I mean, these are things every Christian is being asked to do, and yet Mary's choice to stop, take a posture of a student in a culture that would have been so counterintuitive, shameful, maybe even dangerous, is, I think, one of the most compelling pictures of that for me. It's like, man, do I do that? Or how do I do that?
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing struggle. And yet, going back to the thing we talked about earlier, if I ever think of it as like a checklist or a burden, I've kind of missed out on the gift of it. Like, there's something that I should be looking forward to, enjoying, and should draw more of Christ's life out of me for others as well.
So good. So good. So, one last thing I want to talk about, which is Old Testament. We're talking about Sabbath is bigger than just one day. So you got, on the 7th year, you don't plant anything in your field. So it's built into this agrarian society. These Israelites are farming. And every 7th year, don't plant anything. But then, after 49 years, you get to this other year.
7 sevens.
7 sevens. And then in year 50, you get this year called the Year of Jubilee. And a lot of different things happen in that year, like a lot.
Yeah.
And there's so much of the Jubilee, the Year of Jubilee, that, like when I think of Jesus I think it's in Luke chapter 4, and he's in the synagogue, and he's in Capernaum. Is this Capernaum? Yeah, I think it's in Capernaum. And this is like right before they walk him to the edge of the cliff and want to push him off to kill him, because he's just said, like, hey, today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. Like, the Spirit of the Lord is on me. I'm anointed to, preach the good news to the poor and set the oppressed free and heal the blind, the lame, and the sick. Talk about, because I know you know what this word means, because it's personal to you. talk about Jubilee and Sabbath and like the way that Eden was and life in Eden and like this new resurrection life that I know N.T. Wright talks about, and like talk about that, like Jubilee as part of this Sabbath culture, because we're talking about like the culture of life and American life, like we're like the moon. It's just constantly pulling us in. Talk about Sabbath and Jubilee and like how it's built into like the restoration and the reconciliation of all things to God.
Yeah, so the year of Jubilee is actually, our second daughter is named Jubilee after this very thing. I just find it is the most compelling picture of the gospel embedded in the Old Testament of what God does.
So compelling. And if you know about it, like I know for me, Jubilee wasn't something I was given as like a teenager in modern America, like as church. It was when I went to like Bible school that I was like, oh my, how did I miss this? Why is nobody, why, we should all be talking about this. Like slaves are set free. Debts are forgiven completely and canceled. If you lost your land because you had to sell it because you fell in hard times, you get it back. It's like, wait, that is so countercultural, so counterintuitive, because we're seeing things through the lens of capitalism, et cetera. But sorry, I interrupted, but I'm just like, it's so important.
Yeah, and when Jesus in Luke 4, it's essentially his first recorded sermon. He's quoting Isaiah 61, which is Jubilee language. And he says, this has now been fulfilled in your hearing, rolls up a scroll, hands it to the attendant, and everyone's just like, what did you just say?
Yeah, so it's his mic drop messianic moment. So
I think that there's so many things about the ramifications that would have meant, because remember, coming out of Egypt, these instructions were not just moral, they were moral. A lot of times they were ceremonial, like how do you worship God? And a lot of them were civil, like how does a society run? And that instruction of land will be returned to whom I initially gave it to. The debts that you acquired, that says you have to pay them back until this year, is absolutely revolutionary to any other ancient culture around the world. No, there was no culture that did that. It's pretty fascinating. Actually, Bonhoeffer, when Nazi Germany was on the rise, actually started to develop a system of government that could replace Nazi Germany after he predicted it would fall. And he instituted, like he was curious about things like Jubilee. And so what I find really fascinating is not so much like, man, that is so revolutionary to think about that, is that Jesus says, today the Jubilee, and all that it means is fulfilled in your hearing. Essentially saying, because I'm here. Which I think is why the authors of Hebrews 4 talks about there still is a Sabbath rest for the believer. But its reference is not a day, it's a person. That Jesus is the source of Jubilee. Jesus is the promised land. He's the forgiver of the debt. He's the person who sets free the captive. He's the person who restores to you what was been taken. And so when we read about Jubilee, which and there's all of these patterns in the Hebrew Bible of even how long they were in exile, was how many Jubilees they had missed. Is they go put in 70 years.
Yeah, because that's Jeremiah 29.
Yeah, so however many Jubilees were not kept, then the Lord let the land rest for that many years.
Whoa.
He reset things.
That's really cool.
And so God's serious about freedom. He's serious about restoration. He's serious about this, so much so that when humanity was unable to keep that high and holy order, Jesus says, I'll come and embody it for you. I'll come and be the one who paid the debt you couldn't, who would give up not just my land, but my body for the sake for you to be restored back to Eden. I just think it's one of those beautiful pictures of who Christ has revealed himself to be. Like he is our promised land. He is the Jubilee. And so It goes again that as followers of this Jesus, of the Isaiah 61 fulfillment Messiah, there should be something that marks our life that looks way closer to that than just whatever, and not just in kind of late modern secular America, but in any culture that looks like that, how we forgive, how we restore, how we receive that unto ourselves through Jesus. And so I think the ultimate goal of Sabbath, I think it was the ultimate goal of Jubilee, and even the 7 years. I know last summer I just took a sabbatical, and it was our 7th year into planting a church. And we took the summer off. I wasn't burnt out. I was loving it. Things were good. And we let the soil of our souls rest. And what was surprising is like, it was awesome and so fun. Like the first month was great. The second month felt really weird. And I felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
because you felt like probably you need to do more.
Yeah, I didn't feel useful. And month 3, I was able to take all of that kind of spiritual vertigo, all of that just angst, and I spent some time with some mentors and spiritual directors and therapists just to kind of work through that. And I guess I'll end with this, is I had a really profound conversation with this older man. He's a spiritual director. I meet with him once a month. And he just asked me, he was learning about my sabbatical and about me, and he just made this observation. He's like, it sounds to me, Benji, that the thing that is most important to you is that someday you get to heaven and God would say, well done, good and faithful servant. And I was like, that's kind of it. That's all I want, is to get there and to have been faithful. And he says, like, that is a good and biblical question. He's like, I don't know if it's the most important question. And I kind of piqued my interest. What do you mean? And he's like, I think the question that Jesus is going to be most concerned with is, did you let me love you the way that I wanted to love you? And to be honest, I felt frustrated at that question because I didn't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
Did you let me love you? And immediately kind of the more cynical, theological side of my brain said, well, where is that in the Bible? And immediately I was just reminded of John 13. And he's washing Peter's feet, and Peter rejects it. He's like, don't touch my feet.
Right.
And Jesus says, if I don't do this, you have no part of me. And
I love Peter's response.
I know. And I just so resonate with that. So for me, I've learned to wrestle with that question on most Sabbaths. Did you, if Jesus asking me, did you let me love you the way that I wanted to? And if I'm really honest, most of the time I would say, I don't think so. I feel way more comfortable in saying, am I being faithful to you? Am I serving you?
Am I loving you
the
way I'm supposed to? Totally.
But John makes this abundantly clear, not only in his gospel, but in his letters. Like, we don't get to love the way we're supposed to unless we've received that love. It's something becomes malformed about how we love God and love people if we have not first been recipients of that love. And so the Sabbath is a day for me where I literally say, I'm going to let Jesus love me today. I'm going to let him wash my feet. I'm going to go. And so for me, that could just be like, I'm just going to go surfing. I'm going to enjoy the sunlight on my face. And I'm going to linger in the water and have my phone off. I'm going to, I'm going to go on a long walk with my wife, and just things where these very ordinary things are just ways I can just let Jesus love me and remind me that I am separated from my usefulness. I am not what I produce. I am not my efficiency or significance in a public sense. I get to be first and foremost his son. And I don't know any other container in my life that lets me be as real and honest with that question than the Sabbath. So I think that's why I enjoy it, and at the same time it feels so important. So
that's awesome. Oh man, what a great spot to just hit pause until episode 3 comes out. Because man, this is, every time we talk, I'm just like, gosh. And for those of you who don't know, I'm just getting to know you, and it's been such a blessing. Like I just want to say, like the coolest part about you is that you are exactly how you present. Like there's no pretense, and I just am so drawn to that. So I just thank you for sharing your knowledge and your words and your time with this community, as we're just trying to figure out what it means to follow Jesus in this crazy, crazy world that we live in. So thank you. Yeah, you're awesome.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Mark Andriani.
I'm Benji Horning.
And this is the Echo Collective. Dude, thank you so much. Can we do a quick hey, this is the podcast this week. We'll just do it right here, sitting in the same spot.
Yep.